Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now just a quick episode for you today where I wanted to show you a really good example of why we do a particular thing when designing outlets for bioretention systems, or in this case, the sediment pond on a wetland. A really good example of why we do something in particular with those systems to prevent them blocking up. So I'm going to spin the camera around and show you this outlet here. So we're at a large, what would probably be deemed a regional scale wetland here. So we've got the those culverts there where the water comes into this system. We have the inlet pond here. We have a pit here that takes water from the inlet to the macrophyte zone, which is down over that way. And then if I spin right around at my feet here, we have a big old overflow weir like so. But it's this pit that I wanted to focus on. So what you'll notice about this pit, you'll notice a couple of things here, right? Number one is the design of it. There's a concrete pit which is just underneath the water level because it's been raining a bit recently, so there's water coming into this system. And on top of the pit we have a raised metal grate. And it's the raised part that's really important. So with bioretention design, obviously this is a wetland, but this issue is completely relevant for bioretention as well. With bioretention design, we always say that when you're making an outlet pit in the system, one of these raised concrete pits, you need to put a raised grate on top. The other alternative is a flush grate, so where the grate is at the same height as the concrete. That's a problem. It's because you can see what's happened here, right? It's rained and like leaf litters got into this system and like bottles and an actual litter and that sort of thing. It's got in and it's settled on top of the grate here. Now in this system it's not a problem because that grate is raised. The water can still get between the concrete and the grate, and this system can still drain down. But if you use a flush grate, you can get enough leaf litter on there to completely clog that grate. And this grate here, if it wasn't raised, is like 95% blocked. It only needs a tiny bit more litter and it'll block up completely, right? But we've got this raised grate here so it doesn't block. And this is really important because let's imagine what happened if this wasn't a raised grate here, right? So it's nearly blocked, you know, and one or two more rainfall events in here, a little bit more leaf litter and that sort of thing, it blocks up. Suddenly a couple of things happen. One, the water level in here gets higher because the water can't get out this pit, and instead it would have to fill up a little bit higher and go over this overflow weir here, right? So suddenly the water level all the way around the edge is higher. That means that some of these plants on the edge, like the lomandras that you can see in the background there, suddenly instead of being on the batter where they can keep themselves dry but still sink their roots down and access some water, suddenly they're actually in the water. And lomandras don't like that, and they'll start to die out. Or they'll start to, the ones on the water's edge will die back and they'll creep back up the bank a little bit. Also what will happen is no water will be getting through this pit here and into the macrophyte zone. So of course you're going to end up with less water in the macrophyte zone. And all those plants in there are specifically planted to deal with a particular water level. Now for a short period of time, it wouldn't be a problem. If it happens and someone gets out here and maintains it straight away, the plants will deal with it. And that would be the same for the lomandras on the sediment basin. But if it persists for a long period of time, you'll find that the wetland plants down in the macrophyte zone will get stressed, they'll die out, other species will come in, and you'll have a change in the vegetation type. Of course, the other problem is no water will actually be getting into the macrophyte zone to get treated. And then imagine what happens when the maintenance crew does come out. Say it's been like 3 months, 6 months, something like that. They come out and they'll notice this. Well, if it was a flush grate, they'll notice it, they'll clean it out, and the water level will go back to normal. So suddenly what you've got happening on the sediment pond over here, instead of a nice vegetated bank, you'll have a really open space between the plants and the water from where some of those lomandras died back, and you'll get terrestrial weeds coming in. Same thing in the macrophyte zone, right? So the desirable wetland plants that we wanted had died off and been replaced by some more terrestrial ones, and we fix up this water issue and suddenly we throw a bunch of water in there. Guess what happens? All those terrestrial plants freak out and they'll die, and you'll get left with open water in the system, and then more invasive wetland plants like your typhus and that sort of thing will be able to get in there and colonize, and suddenly your wetlands changed completely. So I'm a real fan of this simple and smart bit of design here, which is using a raised grate. Similarly with the bioretention system, right? Imagine that you use a flush grate in that and it clogs up. Well, suddenly water can't get out of that system unless A, it drains through the media, which is cool. If it's designed well, you will get water away that way. Or if it fills up much, much deeper and overflows the overflow weir, which also isn't a massive problem, but we've got a few risks. That system's going to be under more pressure because it's going to have to get more water through it and so on. Well, there's a big risk, and I saw this once when I used to work at council. I had a system that was really beautifully integrated into the landscape, really, lots of potential for a lovely system, but it had two fundamental problems to it. It had a flush grate on it, and it had no high flow overflow weir. So guess what happened? The flush grate blocked up. Suddenly, water can't get away from an overflow pit, and we had a series of massive storms come through. More than the basin could handle, more than could get away from the filter media. System fills up, water overtopped the batters on the edge, erodes the batter, and suddenly the whole system needs major structural repair. And it could have been fixed if it had simply been built with a raised grate like this. So look, that's it for this episode. As you can tell, I'm a massive fan of this sort of raised grate, and I just had to share it with you. And this is a great example of where it's doing its job, right? Because we've got all the leaf litter here that would block it if it was a flush grate, but it's not. It's still draining perfectly. It's been raining, water's getting into this wetland. I've checked out the other end of the wetland, water's getting out the other end. It's doing its treatment job, and it's a great example. Okay, we'll spin this back around. So that's it. Thanks for watching this episode of Ideanthro. If you want to know, well, actually, firstly, if you've got ideas for episodes or things that you want to know, little tidbits of information you'd like us to answer, questions for us, that sort of thing, drop us a line. You can find our contact details on ideanthro.com. You can also find us on Facebook and send us a message through there. Like the page to keep up to date with what we're doing. That's facebook.com/Ideanthro. And you can find all our videos online on YouTube. You can leave us a comment in the base of those. Cool. Okay, thanks for watching, and we will see you later.